Hi and welcome. Here's our weekly meeting of the Shaping EDU Broadband Access Group. Today, we're happy to have with us Vicki Yuki, and the purpose of today's meeting is to discover what she's doing. We can tell her a little bit about what we're doing and then see where the overlap might lead us to actionable items that will promote broadband across the United States. With that said, Vicki, would you want to do a brief introduction of what you're doing, or would you like us to do a little bit more of a description of where Shaping EDU is at this point?
I would love to hear about Shaping EDU.
Okay, so let's start with Stephanie, our executive director, who can tell you at the broad level rather than the broadband level. And I'll jump in with anything else that we need to add about what our initiative's shooting for, and then we'll talk. So Stephanie.
Sure. So thank you, Vicki, for coming and chatting with us today. So we run Shaping EDU out of Arizona State University, but we are a global community. We have about 4,000 folks that participate with us in some capacity, whether that's on an action team or attending an event. So we have, in 2018, we started with 129 folks that came to ASU, and we're surfacing challenges faced by the education industry as a whole. And our goal is to help lifelong learners thrive. And we are in the technology office of ASU. So we're looking for how EdTech can help to solve some of these challenges. So we convene our community a few times a year around events like you see behind me. We have our space camp coming up in June. One of the big activities we'll be doing there is designing an education system from scratch for Mars. And so we're taking best practices from all over the world and combining them with the technology and tools we have today and developing an education system. So that supports our general mission, but we have 5 calls to action, one of which is digital belonging. And this team has activated around that and supports our digital belonging initiatives. And their primary focus has been universal broadband access, as well as digital navigator discovery and training, and setting up hubs around that. So with that, I'll hand it back over to you, Paul.
Thanks, Stephanie. So to bring it back to exactly what we're doing here, Vicki, most of us on this call have been together for 3 or 4 years now, ever since Shaping EDU started, and in a variety of capacities, mostly volunteer. About 2.5 years ago, or 2 years ago, as a result of an online conference we had, we were kicking around the idea of seeing that the community was changing. Originally, the whole mission, which it remains strongly focused on reshaping learning in the digital era. And we're starting to see a social justice side of it, which got us kicking around the idea of broadband has been of great interest to us. The pandemic had just hit, and obviously people were struggling with it in terms of education, learning, and work. And so a couple of us got together and said, you know, it seems like it might be time for us to focus on the work and learning connection of broadband and see where, as a group of consultants and educators, we might invite other people who've been working at this far longer than we have to see what those kind of conversations could produce if we focused on the idea that we wanted to produce a way of getting greater access to the internet. And that's where we started. And that's what we've worked through for a couple of years now. We've been all over the map. We've done a massive open online course that's designed to help people learn how to be better advocates for it. We teamed up recently with Consumer Reports, and a couple of their people have been in these calls pretty consistently. You'll see Ali and Alan in here. We did an experiment with them using the MOOC to try to activate an Arizona-based hub that would start with a focus on broadband, but then for Consumer Reports, become an activist group dealing with a variety of activist issues there. We've also been working with Robin and Nicole from SUNY. They've got a MOOC that shows people how to learn online, and we're experimenting with the idea that if people come to us and have trouble figuring out how to even use our MOOC, they could start with what SUNY has. And we're looking at the possibility of facilitating that as an initial entry point. Those that don't need that, of course, would just jump into our regular MOOC. But the whole goal here is to get more people involved in what we're doing. We have conversations and disseminate out and see what other groups we can draw in. So obviously NDIA is of great interest to us. We admire the work you're doing. And we wanted to have the conversation today to see if we could extend that further. So that's the nuts and bolts pitch. Does that raise any questions before you get into your side of what you're doing? And tell us what wonderful opportunities we might explore with you.
So how many, thank you for that. I really appreciate that, Paul. That's great. How many people here are members of NDIA or on the NDIA listserv, basically for the, as an affiliate or an organization? I'd just like to know.
A listserv, I get your communications.
Yes.
And I deal a lot with our state librarians here who are members, Mala, Holly Henley in Arizona.
Awesome. Awesome. And then
And I
Steve,
see
I saw
Helen
you
is
also.
raising a virtual hand there. It looks like almost half the group.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so I was just trying to decide how much I need to share about NDIA. So my name is Vicki Yuki, and I am a senior program manager, senior programs manager with the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. We're an organization that has over 700 affiliates across the country. I think we're in about 48 states and territories in the US. It's on our website. It changes. And so I never know, maybe it's 46. I don't know, but we're kind of everywhere these days. And we absolutely, our focus is on digital inclusion across the country. And we pretty much serve as we do separate pillars of work. We work on policy, we work on data and research, we work on ways in which we can help our community of affiliates, with the work that they're doing. We understand that, a lot of stuff that happens, happens at the ground level. So I've been with NDIA since October. Just this past October of 2021, that's 2021. And before that, I was with the city of Seattle for about 10 years doing digital equity work. So I worked as a strategic advisor with the city of Seattle in our information technology department. We've had a community technology program at the city of Seattle for about 20 plus years now. And so we've been doing digital inclusion work for a long time. And then and then before that, I was with the Housing Authority of the City of Seattle. So for about 10 years. So I tend to stay in places for 10 years. So it seems to be a pattern. Unlike a lot of people, and I'm based in Bellevue, Washington. So I am on the other side of the country from the SUNY folks, but only halfway across the country from the ASU folks. And so I'm just really pleased to be here and to learn more about your organization. That's amazing. I mean, I think that's just an amazing number of members or folks that, connect with you guys. 4,000, that's awesome. Do you mostly do stuff that's very focused on Arizona? Do you do statewide stuff, or do you do stuff that's are you looking at things more nationally? I mean, I'm just kind of curious about that.
So I can address that for Shaping EDU as a whole. What we generally try to do is develop resources that we can share to our community, which is a global community, to then take back to their communities of practice to foster change. So as the Shaping EDU program as a whole is a global program. This particular team has primarily been focused on the United States, but we've included folks from other areas of the world to listen to their best practices and stories and key learnings from things that they've done that we could then perhaps implement locally here in the States.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah.
So Vicki, we also, I coordinate the Arizona Digital Access Task Force. And so we're focused primarily on Arizona. We have folks from nonprofit organizations, libraries, school districts, state agencies who all participate in that task force. And of course, digital inclusion is certainly becoming a priority. And as Mark commented earlier, we work a lot with the state library, who is part of NDIA. We have several of our people who are involved with NDIA. So digital access, digital inclusion is a part of our DNA and has been forever. And then, of course, we're getting more focused on Arizona versus EDU, which has a much broader focus.
Got it.
Let's go over the geography very quickly. Tom's in Houston. Lisa, who's not on the call yet, she's in Florida. Ruben's in Massachusetts. Allie and Alan, I think, are both in New York, right? And I'm in California. I'm based here in San Francisco.
Oh, okay. Okay. So everybody's everywhere. Got it. Okay. I just made an assumption. So, got it. So I think that there's just a lot going on, with you guys. So you guys are doing a lot of really wonderful things. We just had our Net Inclusion conference in February, which is where people from all around the country gathered. It was the first time I think I've been to an in-person conference of that size and type since the pandemic hit, and it went really well. The wonderful thing about those types of opportunities is just being able to hear about the new and creative and innovative things that are happening around the country, and then how can we best support. So the work that NDIA does is we really want to help support the local efforts that are happening, and so some of those things is like, for instance, we do a digital inclusion 101 type of webinar every quarter, I believe. I don't think it's monthly anymore. And then we do we put out a guide on how to build coalitions, how to build and sustain digital equity or digital inclusion coalitions. And so there's a lot of this. And then we also have our digital navigator program that we have we've developed a framework for digital navigators, and then currently there is an opportunity that's for rural and tribal communities to apply for when it comes down to the digital navigator core. We recently received a $10 million grant from google.org to help advance digital navigators in rural and tribal communities, and so we're working with Amarin to push that out. And so right now, currently, there is a LOI that's coming out. And so that we're accepting LOIs. So let me go ahead and just put this in the chat, and then you can just, rather than share screen or do anything like that, you can take a look at it. But if you're interested in digital navigators, that's something that I heard mentioned. And then also, Robin and Nicole had mentioned it to me in a meeting that we'd had a couple weeks ago. And so, but it's a great opportunity if you are working if you are in a kind of a rural or tribal area community. And it seems like you're in various different states, so that's great. You can take a look at what's being offered there. And then the idea is that, we do basically a boot camp training for digital navigators that get hired for that. And then we provide that additional support ongoing for those organizations that receive funding for digital navigators.
There are so many possibilities obvious here. We've just been keeping up with Lisa, who's doing some amazing things in Florida through our affiliation that she created with the FCC. I think she's one of 10 pilot projects in small communities, and I think shaping up very well. So you and Lisa might want to talk about overlap in that area. We also, in terms of our own digital navigation work, we've just started looking at that over the last couple of months as a result of a recent conference we had. So we're early in the process, but it seems like a really good avenue for us to explore. Again, figuring that we could be a center meeting place for people like you that already have the boot camp in place, people that have handbooks that could be used out there. We help disseminate that off what we've got on our webpage at the Shaping EDU site. And we're also looking at some other ways to disseminate information we've got. A lot of things up in the air. A big question I want to ask you, and then I'd like other people on the call to also jump into this conversation. And that is, what, if anything, is a big gap for you that we might be able to help you fill?
Oh, that's a great question. What we do is, before we actually publish anything or we do anything, as we start on creative journeys, doing these types of things, we have working groups. We pull together working groups. We don't do anything in a vacuum. We don't even create our own definitions in a vacuum. If we have a definition we want to create for digital inclusion, we put it out there to the community, our community on a listserv, and then we have conversations about it, and so that we come to some common understanding. So absolutely, if you could be tapped for serving on working groups, because there may be organizations that are part of your network that are interested in very specific areas that we're working on. For instance, we are about ready to launch an asset mapping guide, and framework. And, but right now it's in its beta stages. And so we are looking for, interested folks who would be interested in testing something like that out. You can reach out to me, and then I can put you in connection with whoever it is that you'd be in, who is managing that on our side. Aaron Schill is managing that on our end, for instance. And, that's the opportunity. The coalitions, we did launch our coalitions guidebook. However, we will be having a working group for that as well, because we feel like, there's lots of, when NDIA started, it started in 2015. And so I've known NDIA and Angela Seifer, who's our executive director, since before that. Because of the work I was doing with the city of Seattle, we would just, the community wasn't that big, the digital equity community wasn't that huge. And so, they've grown so NDIA has grown from a staff of 3 to we're at 22 now. No, we're at 22, 17, 22, something like that, where it continues to change. And we basically are, and that's in the last couple of years. There's just a lot of opportunity happening right now, and with the IIJA, with the 2.75 billion that's going to be coming down for digital equity. There's a lot of policy stuff that we're filing. We actually have created a state guide for states to be able to develop their own plans, and what that so that they can then, because there's going to be state planning grants first, and then they're going to eventually submit those plans, and then that's when the funding will begin to come through for providers. And so we've helped to publish a state guide for that. It's kind of not available right now because we're working. It was a contract we had with NTIA, and so they're hoping to launch that out themselves. And so we actually we didn't realize that, so we launched it. So if you have links from other places, then you could probably access it, but I can't just plunk a link in the chat, otherwise I would. But we're always looking for ways in which we can have this dialogue with the local communities, so that your interests are met as well as we move forward.
All right, so here's step one. I just put my email into the chat for you. If you want to grab that, we can do a follow-up conversation here. When you talk about the coalition guidebook, I'd love to be involved in that with you. I do a lot of work in helping to build communities. It's something I focus on here at Shaping EDU, with drawing people into the community and looking for opportunities for us to do stuff under Stephanie's guidance and under the auspices of ASU. So if you're looking for people on the coalition's guidebook, keep me in mind there. We can do a follow-up conversation. Let me see what other people on the call have heard from you and where they might be able to step in and work with you on some of what you've been asking. Anyone else?
So Vicki, one of the areas that we're really beginning to focus on now is cybersecurity. So as we move into the whole digital inclusion space, and we're giving people devices and connectivity and all, I haven't seen a lot of information coming out about cybersecurity. And how are we going to help all these people? We got small business. I mean, you know the universe of people who were trying to get connected here, but I'm not seeing a lot of discussion about cybersecurity. We're just going to begin a dialogue with the Arizona Department of Homeland Security. Actually, hope to be with their executive director next week. But it really seems to be an important issue, particularly with what's happening in the world today. While certainly a lot of that focus is on critical infrastructure, but it crosses over just about everything. So I'm wondering, have you guys talked about that? What are you seeing from the feds in terms of cybersecurity at this point?
We are not hyper focused on cybersecurity. It's a content area that it's very important, and we know that it's very important. The stuff that we do, we try to ensure that that there are resources out there. And so, but that's not to say that we don't have any information on cybersecurity. But I don't believe that there's a working group happening around that right now. So I'm happy to take that back and see what folks say within our group. It's similar to because we know that our state, because we're not a direct service provider ourselves, we try to provide resources for the local providers of local community-based organizations, libraries, schools, and such, to have access to that content, the information around cybersecurity, but we don't actually create content around it.
So part of my question is, as I've looked at what NDIA is doing and how you guys define digital inclusion, and you and others, that I'm not seeing that And we're starting to include that in our discussions locally about that it's another pillar. So, we've got connectivity, we've got devices, we've got training, all those things. But in my opinion, it needs to be another pillar or another key point that people need to address. And certainly as we get into state planning, that needs to be a part of that dialogue.
Sure.
In my opinion.
Thank you very much.
Just to tease that out a little bit further, a practical projection of that would be around privacy and data agency.
Yep.
So that may be much more in tune to, again, an individual as to how do I, how should I engage and interact within this new space. And one of them is always being assured as to what I'm doing with my data or what others are doing with that, which then folds in that cybersecurity aspect to it. Within education, at least, cybersecurity risks and attacks have grown by 800% just over COVID. So again, it is now getting down to individual, awareness that makes everything else stronger. But I think I would tease that apart to look at what is the broader effort that a digital navigator could help elicit within those that they're working with to raise awareness around privacy and around data ownership.
Right.
Well, and it's really even a bigger issue. And Barnaby, you sort of touched on this, but as I had conversations with the folks at Homeland Security here in Arizona, that one of the things that we recognized, I had a Security Alliance back in 2008, and one of the things we recognized is that there's a weak link. Anybody who doesn't have security now opens up networks to attacks that reach to other people besides just their own systems and networks. And so it's really important that people understand that if they don't do something, that they're putting other people at risk also.
I think Alan's got something he wants to add to this conversation. Alan, you want to jump in?
Yeah. Hi, Vicki. Nice to see you. I'm an organizer with Consumer Reports, and we're trying to do some of our own versions of equipping some of our members to be digital navigators. So the first thing I want to ask you and to flag is I would just love to see how you all are thinking about that position and sort of what you think someone needs to do to be qualified and trained appropriately and all those things. And if we could avoid duplicating resources and remaking the wheel, that's always a good thing. And then secondarily, I think that just to throw in here, I think that the cybersecurity question is a really important one, and it's something that Consumer Reports has been thinking about a lot and trying to figure out ways of equipping consumer level or consumer facing digital, cybersecurity tools. And so I think that, that's something that we've been trying to work into, like, not just getting people online, but trying to make sure that they're not afraid of all of the things that could happen to them when they get online, trying to kind of bridge that fear gap a little bit. So we have some interesting resources in that regard.
Great, thank you. I'm just posting in the chat our digital navigator model, and in the model itself, we have not only have we defined it and done stuff around that, we also have resources that we put in there that can be used by organizations that are hoping to implement their own digital navigator, which includes job descriptions, infographics, intake forms, exit surveys, things like that, which I think could be really useful to what it is you're talking about. Like, we have a baseline digital navigator job description there at the bottom. And I think that helps to kind of identify a little bit about what that looks like. And
in your ideal world, how is this resource used? Are people getting back in touch with you and saying, we've got these people who are signed up using this form, or are you just trying to open source it and let 1,000 flowers bloom?
We like to let 1,000 flowers bloom, 10,000 if possible.
10,000, right. I undersold it.
It's okay. So basically, what we found, and this is, I think, a phenomenon that's been happening nationally that we already know about. There's a lot of supportive services providers, human services providers we know about who are working with folks like in various different capacities, such as trying to help people sign up for Medicare or helping them sign up for food benefits, anything that might be out there, right? And so you've got in various different languages, especially coming from Seattle, we have lots of languages that people work with. And so we have a lot of community-based organizations that work with those communities specifically. And they've been doing this work. They've been helping them to, somebody calls and they're just like, okay, I want help with this. And then, which might be, I need to sign up for food benefits. And then they're just like, oh, but I can't get on the internet, or how do I do that? Or what is this, And so the digital navigator, so they become somewhat digital navigators on their own. So some people take that and then they just grow, they blossom and they grow, and then they become like these people who become everything's to folks, but, capacity is limited. And so, and then their knowledge and skills becomes kind of like all over the place, right? So, oh, go talk to Alice, but don't talk to Vicki. Becomes the thing, right, amongst community members. If you need help with this, then go there, go here, go there. And I think we've just found that, and it became really apparent during the pandemic, because so all these issues we've been dealing with, so I've been working with for like a long time now, since early 2000. The thing is that, the pandemic kind of brought things to, just brought it up to the top. So when you talk about things like the need for devices, the need for adequate broadband, all that stuff has always been an issue. But because of the pandemic, it's really brought it up to the surface. And then now there's funding that's there. And then it became like a funding thing, being able to fund that type of work. Right. And so, so to answer your question, digital navigators are folks that are dedicated to doing this type of work. And what they do is they're not tech support people. They're not tech support. What they do is that they individually assess folks and they're just like, okay, well, where are you on this technology scale towards adoption? Like eventually we want everyone to adopt the technology, right? Like you use it in your daily stuff, not just work, not just school, but, you use it to buy tickets to a music festival. You use it to do online shopping. You use it to figure out why your computer is acting all wonky. That's adopting the technology, right? And so the digital navigators are really that baseline support to kind of help them. How do you find access to, we call it low cost. I like to call it low cost broadband as opposed to affordable, but low cost broadband. And how do you find access to a device that meets your needs? Sometimes it's like a tablet and sometimes it's a laptop and sometimes it's a phone, we don't promote the phone. We want people to have laptops, and we want people to have hardwired broadband to their home. There's certain things that we want, but what is it that people need, and so that's what the digital navigator helps to do, helps them to find access to classes, to the different education opportunities that are out there. And
Over the last couple of months, one of the things we've been exploring is how people get into broadband and some kind of a ladder of engagement. Like people first find one little thing they need to do online and they need help on that. You can see one level of digital navigator assistance on that. As they move through this and get more interested, then at the other extreme end, they may actually become advocates within their communities for the expansion of that. Do you see that as part of the role of the digital navigators you're working with to actually become proponents for broadband access?
Oh, I think that's a big part of their role. It's not necessarily that they are advocates to go out there and because the skill set of a digital navigator might be very specific, right? And so their desire may be to help folks one-on-one or help communities in clusters or whatever. It depends on what that looks like. But eventually, I think anybody that works with digital inclusion, does digital equity work at all, becomes an advocate of some sort. We just can't help it.
Got it.
I like to think we can't help it. Like we just can't help talking about it, right? Like I can talk about this for days and days and days, about why this is right and why we need to do this. it's just, I think that just is naturally how we gravitate. And I think that that's how they do as well. But they also have a case list, caseload. They have, a group of folks they got to work with, and trying to stay up on what's available in their communities, because every community is different. Anna, did you have a question?
I did. So it's okay for us to share. Hi, I'm Anna. It's okay for us to share the digital navigator model with others, because next week I will be a digital navigator for a senior citizen location. I'm volunteering to help set up accounts on online shopping. And so ASU offered that opportunity to us. And so I signed up for a few hours to teach that. And I thought, well, this is great. So yeah, okay.
Everything on our site, everything we do is open source. We do everything we create, we offer, we do is all open to everybody.
Great, thank you.
Great. So Lisa's just shown up at a totally fortuitous moment for the next part of the conversation. What we have on the table so far is, I've already told you, I'm happy to help you out with your coalition guidebook. Any assistance you need there, and you may find others in the call willing to jump in. I'm hearing Steve and Barnaby and Alan, and I think by extension, Ali, say that this whole thing around privacy, use of data, cybersecurity is an issue where they're willing to work with you if there's something that would be of interest to you. The other thing I just heard Anna say is that the very model you've shared with us is something she's going to incorporate into work. So we're walking through this meeting already with some concrete steps that do exactly what we're trying to do, which is have a conversation and see where it builds. Now we come to the digital navigator thing overall. Lisa's really taken the lead on that with our group in many ways. Barnaby's then involved, as is Stephanie. What might we be doing to help you on the digital navigator side? And what can we bring to the table that you really need right now?
Are you talking to me or to Lisa?
Vicki, talking straight to you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I totally thought you were talking to Lisa because you said you're joining.
No, I was bringing Lisa into that, trying to give her a summary and at the same time just say, here's what we've done so far, so she'd see where we're at.
Okay.
Digital navigation has been something Lisa's really at the forefront of in this group, along with Stephanie. So now that she's here and now that she's heard what we've talked about so far, what can we be doing, Vicki, to bring Shaping EDU's broadband initiative to the table as an asset for you? Again, focusing on the idea, we're looking at work and learning and how broadband supports that.
Oh, that's easy. You're asking me some really big questions.
As a mentor of mine, you said, we don't wait for catch up, man. We're just going into this.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, again, I mentioned the working groups, and then Barnaby's reached out to me. I got your contact. Thank you very much. And I'll get that to you. I'll get back to you as well. But the best thing you can really do is to join our affiliate network. It's just really important to do that. And let me just put the join link on here.
And I submitted a little while ago our Shaping EDU application for that.
Awesome.
So
That's fantastic. Is there an individual level that we need to join in also, Vicki, or is it only organizational?
No, you can join as affiliate, which is an organization, or you can join as a friend. It's all free. If you are, there are subscribers who decide that they want to pay an annual fee, which then they get, discounts to our events. And then also we have a monthly community call. We have a monthly community call, which is everybody in our affiliate network can join. And then we have subscriber calls, which are kind of smaller, and we only have subscribers in there. So we actually comb through who's attending, and we're just like, who's a subscriber, because we talk about things a little bit more in depth, and it becomes a little bit more of a back and forth conversation. But the community group, definitely the community calls are just absolutely, they're awesome. And that's pretty much how I got to know NDIA as an organization, because City of Seattle was an affiliate, but also I just joined as a friend because I'm just like, I want to get this information on my own. But it's you can do it either way. It's totally free. And we do have, I know that we do work. We know of folks. We are our policy director, Amy Huffman. She knows folks in Arizona as well. We have, I have a colleague, I think, who is based in Arizona. And so we're just kind of all over the country. And so I would love to get to know your organization a little bit better and see, you know, I mean, I'd love to get to know Shaping EDU. I'd love to have a moment to have a chat with Stephanie, you know, and that would be great to learn more about y'all.
Standard offer that we make usually at the end of the call, but let's hit it right now. If you want to be part of these meetings on an ongoing basis, just let us know. Stephanie can add you to the mailing list. We use the same link every week. So once you've got the link, which you have today, you can just use the same thing and drop in anytime you want.
Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
Vicki, separately of that, I'll schedule some time for us to connect because I'd love to get you guys involved with the space camp event that we have coming up, where we're designing, you know, an education system from scratch, as well as several other events that we have coming up. And we can also offer different ways to activate this community. So you had mentioned us, you know, helping beta test things. We will be your guinea pigs. We can reach out to the community and get feedback in a fairly efficient method and pass that along to you, or we can have specific workshops to convene folks and come up with ideas to tackle challenges.
Absolutely. We do offer a fee for service as well, you know, so if you have a specific idea of what you want to do, if you want to do more in-depth design work, you know, we can also work with you on that. An example of that is our New York Digital Inclusion Fund, you know, which is basically Schmidt Futures reached out to us and wanted to do an initiative in New York State. And so they basically fund the effort, and then we are the basically became the granting organization and provide that support to these different and that was we have 10 coalition planning grantees in New York, across New York State, and then we also have 5, soon to be 10, I think, innovation grantees, innovation projects.
Oh, fantastic.
Kind of different ideas, you know. We've also, and you know, our guidebook, for instance, our guidebook was produced, coalition guidebook is produced in partnership with with Schmidt Futures, and then our state guide is done in partnership with NTIA. So I mean, we do provide that service as well. You know, that's some work that we do as well.
Vicki, can you just say, is that Digital Inclusion Innovation Fund going to open up again very soon? Is that in the spring?
We plan on doing a launch on May 9th. And
Okay,
so we plan on it being launched on May 9th. Those are innovation grants, will be for organizations in the state of New York.
Great.
Doing digital equity work, digital inclusion work, and have very specific tangible project idea that they'd like to do. They're 1 to 2 year grants, upward from minimum $50,000 up to $250,000.
So
I
Vicki,
think that's the grant that MTech applied for, that kind of got our groups talking to each other.
Yeah.
So it was part of the Pente pitch discussion.
Yeah, so I think that Vicki, we could talk about also, you know, if that's a model that's replicable in Arizona, we could do something locally, or we could do something nationally with this group as well. So yeah, very interested in discussing that.
That'd be great.
This group has no shortage of ideas, that's for sure.
I know the terrible thing is none of us are very creative and we just don't know what to do with ourselves.
Well, I will definitely take your names and everything back to my group and have a conversation about what we can, you know, how we can collaborate further.
Vicki, is there anything we haven't asked you that you wanted to talk about today?
I don't believe so. We have there's just a lot going on. There's a lot of really great things going on, and you know, we're especially really focused right now on trying to help work with states. I think it's really important, you know, for you all to become very very tied into your state, you know, tied into your state broadband offices, tied whatever state you're in, you know, and have those conversations. If you are near a local area coalition, to join those digital inclusion coalitions, or if you are part of one, to make sure that you're connected with the state office, because those states are going to be the ones that are going to be designing the plans, for how those funds should be spent within each state. And so it's important to kind of be put on the map. If you have a very specific interest, if Steve and Barnaby both brought up cybersecurity. I mean, if that's priority, then, you want to be part of the state network so that you can then make sure that, that's a priority, so that they understand that that's a priority and why. That's really kind of where we're super focused on right now, because the NOFO for that should drop sometime May, June as well. So
Vicki, and you've sort of addressed it, and we know with all the federal money that's coming down, but one of the things that we observed is that we have a lot of people applying for internet grants to get people connected. But what I'm not seeing is the integration of digital inclusion in those grants. And so one of the things when we worked on a grant with a large nonprofit here in Arizona, and we were saying that one of the things we needed to do was to make sure that local communities and our counties were developing digital inclusion plans, and ideally that they're doing that in conjunction with the internet grants that they're planning. I mean, we know that there's different pots of money, and there's money for funding for infrastructure development and digital inclusion, but it seems to me that we really have to start changing that dialogue to digital inclusion and not just internet. And so are you seeing that? It seems like that's beginning to happen at the federal level with the way funding is now shaping up, but I'm wondering how or if you guys have also addressed that issue.
Oh, absolutely. We've been at the table with them from the beginning, with the design of the NOFO, what that's going to look like, what should be included. And our community of practitioners, across our affiliate network was very involved with designing what was going to be going into that, what our comments were for that. They sent out a request for comments to us, and we actually submitted a ton of comments with very specific focus on digital equity, and how important that is. And I think something just came down from the state today, from the federal government today. It was from OMB about advancing effective stewardship of taxpayer resources and outcomes in the implementation of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And so I'll go ahead and just post that in here as well. You can take a look at it. And that just came down from the White House. And it talks, there's just a lot of talk about, agency coordination, making sure that everything is let me just see here. Where was I just reading that? It's not super long.
Vicki, is that targeted just to the digital inclusion or digital divide, or because OMB is used for a lot of other programs like grant funded programs?
This was specifically for, this is a memorandum to the heads of executive departments and agencies regarding the IIJA.
Okay.
So, and it says that specifically in the subject, but the idea is that, they want to ensure that, sorry, just trying to get to where the, talking about, very specifically, agencies should ensure equity expertise, including having an agency equity teams on advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities. It's a very strong component of the entire IIJA. And so I think, and that's including the infrastructure dollars, the dollars going towards infrastructure. So I think it's something that, the states, they're trying to hammer home with the states that this is really a priority, that you can't just create a plan that's going to be like, oh, we're just going to wire everybody, except for these little pockets that are inconvenient to us. So,
hey, Vicki, I know Lisa's got an offer she wants to make to everybody before we wind this whole thing down. So Lisa, you want to talk about the meeting you've got coming up with Lyle?
Yeah. So just very quickly, I think everybody saw my email about we're doing the big kickoff event May 14th for Belle Glade to get people connected. It's turning out to be quite a big deal. Tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern. By the way, Lyle Ashita is flying in for the event. He's flying here into Florida for the event. So we're having FCC there. And tomorrow evening at 7 p.m., Morana, the original, the contact at the Haitian church there in Belgrade, and myself, we'd already done the train the trainer meeting with Lyle, but now he's recruited 3 more people, very influential in the community, who are really going to be taking this on. And so tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern, Lyle has set up a Zoom to do a train the trainer for these 3 digital navigators. I asked him about all of you, and he said, yeah, for sure, give them the link, because that way you can see what a train the trainer is. And again, the idea of us taking this as a pilot and then recreating this whole thing for Arizona and other states and other cities. So I'd love you to hear the whole process. I'd love you to meet Morana, what it's like actually working with the guy who's feet on the ground, and then with the FCC, and how the whole process works, so that we can get going with Shaping EDU doing the same.